I pledge to stay drug-free.
I plan to stay drug-free.
I pledge to stay drug-free.
I pledge to be drug-free.
I pledge to stay drug-free.
And good afternoon, and welcome to Expose Under the Sun, sponsored by the Detroit Native Sun newspaper. I am your host, Darwin Griffin, and stay tuned to a lively conversation with my guest, and we're going to really kind of educate some people on a lot of words, because just in the time that we were waiting to come on the air, I was learning some new words. So, I'm always up to learning new words so that I can go and spring them upon you and to my other listening audience as well. But again, we are live, so if you'd like to join in on the conversation, you can call in. Our phone numbers are area code 313-868-0342, 313-868-0351, or 313-868-4336. And our website is www.tv33whpr.com. And again, we are streaming live from the awesome city of Highland Park, Michigan, under the auspices of the Mayor, Hubert Yap. And again, I just want to thank R.J. Watkins and Henry Tyler, the owners of the station, for allowing us to have this half an hour with you. So again, we're also sponsored by Lemon Burn, and if you'd like to get more information, because being healthy is being the new you. So if you'd like to go and you'd like to obtain a bottle of Lemon Burn, you can contact someone here at the station at area code 313-868-6612. And again, I just want to express some, I went to a memorial service for one of the employees of our Wayne County clerk, Kathy Garrett. Her name was Suzanne Stewart. And I had found out that I used to work with her when I was over the Work First program back in the late 90s. And she was one of the Work First contractors' career development individuals. So sometimes you never know how you may be connected with someone. And the thing that I would recommend to everyone is check on your loved ones. The holiday season is getting ready to come around, Christmas and New Year. So make sure you reach out and touch your loved ones. Make a phone call, make a visit. But the thing is that make sure that you, if you can't, reach out to them, ask somebody else to reach out to them. Because everyone during this time of the year may have a lot of things going on in their lives, but make certain that you do reach out and you touch someone. Again, I just want to say a word of condolences to our Wayne County Clerk, Kathy Garrett. I thought she gave a beautiful speech in regard to her employee and some of the other men and women that spoke in conjunction to the homegoing of Ms. Stewart. So it was great seeing one of my college alumni from Michigan State University, Ms. Mary Jones, and I'll give a shout out to the sorority that she belongs to. I was on their court, but it was the Sigma Gamma Rhos. So a lot of you know that I am a proud member of the first African-American fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha, Black and Gold. And I do want to also give a shout out to the other individuals that are in sororities and fraternities, because there was a lot that we all went through, and there's a lot that we all are going through. So the camaraderie, the sisterhood, the brotherhood of the Divine Nine is very, very important, especially in building young men and young women into adulthood. But with all that said, I do want to just kind of say a few little shout outs to some people to kind of, go and get well. To my partner, Carl Baxter. I want to send my best wishes to your twin boys to get well, and also want to give a little shout out to Miss Lisa Talton, who is going through sore throat. So I definitely want you to get well, get healthy, and anyone else that is going through any illnesses or any setbacks, I hope that God alleviates whatever you are going through. Continue to stay prayed up, and make certain too that if you have faith, when fear comes to the door knocking, send faith to answer that door. Okay, today we're going to learn a few new words. We're going to get an opportunity to go and have some dialogue. We're going to talk a little bit about anthropology today. So we're going to get really, really geared up to, talk all these different terms and politics and everything, man. So we are looking forward to having a good dialogue with you, and stay tuned. Okay, my guest today, she is a professor at Wayne County Community College District, and her name is, and I'm going to make sure I say this right, her name is Sunanda Samadar Corrado. Correct?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Loving it. Yes.
And she is an adjunct professor of anthropology at Wayne County Community College District, correct?
Yes, that's
Okay.
true. I teach anthropology.
Okay. And tell a little bit in terms of, say, about what made you get into the field of anthropology first?
What got me into the field of anthropology? I actually thought I wanted to be a lawyer first, and then I kind of thought, well, I don't know. I just kind of kept going on through school. What got me through anthropology was dance. I never wanted to stop dance. So I actually got to New York, and I got into this master's program at New School University. And I got to give a shout out to New School because it's a radical university. Mm-hmm. It keeps intellectuals coming in from South America and other parts of Asia where intellectuals are not allowed to come into America. I don't know if you know about a little bit about the history of New School, but it was started by dissident professors from Columbia.
Okay.
And what they were doing was they were bringing in intellectuals before they were killed off by the Nazis.
Oh, wow.
Because the Nazis started by killing off those who had a public voice and who dissented before they came upon the populations to destroy them, or at least their mental, firstly and foremost. But in any case, in New School, I went there to get away from Michigan. I wanted to go to New York. I wanted to dance. But the fervor of anthropology came into me when I realized that other people were coming here to seek an education to make people's lives better. Mm-hmm. Up until then, I had pretty much of a middle-class life. I really enjoyed going out, being in college. I enjoyed keg parties. I enjoyed studying hard. And I enjoyed thinking. But I never thought about the idea that people were dying for a right to speak, for a right to think, and for a right to share their ideas. So New School was a very transformative experience for me. At that time, I'd also become a principal dancer for Nayakas, which was the first South Asian Odissi classical dance company in New York. So I applied to Columbia, and before you know it, they gave me the opportunity, and I looked at comparative international education. And so I was kind of looking at how people are kind of strewn across the world as transnational capital. Oftentimes we're looking at goods and services, mm-hmm. and we look at people as trafficking. But people are numerous types of capital that we don't really start to delve into until we have a crisis point.
Now, you mentioned in terms of, say, about being a professor of anthropology. For the 2 or 3 people that may not know the difference,
yes.
What is the difference between, well, first, define anthropology, and then can you tell what is the difference between anthropology and psychology?
Well, oftentimes when students come into my classroom, they think anthropology is the study of people. Mm-hmm. But what I try to tell them is all social sciences study people, that people are a source of data. But all social sciences have a distinct object of study. So for instance, psychology, it's the mind. The mind isn't a person, and it's a construct because the mind isn't a biological variable or entity as well. Mm-hmm. It's shared, but it also has a private inner world, and there's this dialogue or discourse between them. right? So they're studying people, but in terms of coming up for a concept of the mind that is more universal. It's the same with anthropology in the way that we're looking at culture. But as opposed to looking at the mind, we look at culture as a shared sense of embodied memory and history that is passed down over time.
So now, when we look in terms of, say, at the different types, now when I'm thinking in terms, say, anthropology, I'm thinking about when a lot of times you may have, because people don't know sometimes the difference between anthropology and archaeology.
Yeah, well, archaeology is, as people like to put it, digging up all bones.
Right.
But a lot of archaeological skills are used in forensic anthropology, for instance, when you're digging up mass graves. So it's really a point of view, what's the past and what's relevant today, especially when you're looking at stuff like mass graves. But I guess
so
it's
the
like
mass graves, that like when you had a lot of mass graves from where the Hitler had killed a lot of the Jewish population and was putting them in some of those massive graves. So you then find and do a lot when it comes down to uncovering some of the different artifacts and some of the different bones of some of those individuals that were put in those mass graves.
There's a lot of trauma and pathology that a lot of forensic anthropology looks at. It looks at international law, and it looks at humanity and our kind of universal idea about it. For instance, the professors here, one is Iris Green, who works at Wayne County Community College, and she does a lot of archaeology around the city of Detroit.
Okay.
I don't think people realize that a lot of our history is being sunken into the ground. We don't really have to look at ancient history to come up with the idea that we belong here too. She's also looked into this idea of all these schools that have been torn down in recent years. Some of them have actually had very valuable paintings, perhaps even by Diego Rivera, but these schools were torn down and the social capital was taken away. I remember when I went to a Wright Museum Forum that was held by Dana Hart and Tom Pedroni, who are longtime activists, and there are other people involved. It was amazing. They brought all these cities together, but one narrative that kept sticking out of my mind, and there was like Inkster, Ecorse, Highland Park, all the cities that came under emergency financial management. All these cities have a common memory of citizens going into the dumpsters to take out trophies of their past champions in their neighborhoods. So America is a cultural history of erasure, and we have to understand erasure as being its own history when denying memory or gaslighting a people into believing that we have a common founding father or a homogeneous history literally brings us into a psychological crisis.
No, I thought that was so interesting because, and I know that you're right when it comes down to finding a lot of the history in the dumpsters.
Yeah.
Because I know that there was I was counseling at one of the schools, and that was the thing that they had was a lot of trophies that they even had from past, seasons that they had played sports. And those trophies were about to be discarded. And it saddens me because the fact is that you learn from your history, you learn from your past. And in order to be able to go and discover where you're going to go or what paths you want to take as far as, say, for your future. So now when you're talking about with anthropology, because I'm thinking in terms of, say, like, to look at the evolution of different cultures, to look at the evolution of different people. And I know we were talking before we came on the air and talking about my name in terms of, say, with Darwin. And I love what you were saying.
Oh,
so
yeah.
if you can
it's so
just
funny because anthropology is all about bringing to light subjugated voices and points of views that are not understood. And it's just so great that your name is Darwin, because Darwin is so pivotal to our ideas about cultural and natural selection. But Darwin is also completely misunderstood. Darwin looked at evolution as a collaborative effort, as an effort of different memories working together. So for instance, humans didn't migrate out of Africa on their own. They followed larger prey that followed other predators. So there's overlapping memory. When you see predators following elephants, how do elephants make their own migratory paths? Well, on a National Geographic show that made me cry all night, by the way, it was revealed that elephants, which are matriarchal in disposition, go from site to site where other matriarchs have died. And so they caress the bones and they cry and they wail, and just like kids at a mosque or a temple or a church, they start crying and wailing. But it's not until somebody they love dies and they come back around to that pilgrimage point in their route that they start making that association. So when we're looking at elephants, their pilgrimage or their route isn't random. It's based on memory and it's based on ancestral worship. In fact, mammals are not instinctual. The reason mammals have a wrinkly brain is because we're based on memory.
Okay.
All mammals.
Now,
Oh no, I made a generalization.
well, don't. I mean, that's one thing that I think that we all tend to do. You know, make those generalizations. But tell in terms of say about how do we look at love? How do we view love?
Well, I wrote a really hefty dissertation, and I had to leave about 80% of my data out of it. And it was looking at Bangladeshi high school kids in Detroit public schools. But when I went into these schools, all the kids wanted to talk about was, guess what? Their boyfriends and their girlfriends and their love stories. And that was 80% of my data, them just wanting to tell me and to feel out and to fantasize and to be the somebody they hope to become. So I realized that love is this real aspirational variable, if you want to call it, that nobody wants to measure or understand. Love is not understood in the social sciences because we're always measuring people in terms of pathology and control.
Okay.
Nowhere in social science are we measuring people in the religious sense of transcendence and ascendance and wanting to be something bigger. What motivates us is not economics. What motivates us is wanting to be something to our families, wanting to mean something to each other, not wanting to be forgotten, wanting to exist and knowing to have been existed. You know, it's that need to be connected to a larger consciousness. I think that becomes at peril, especially in the education system, because students do come in with these aspirational questions, but when you bog them down with Bio 101, you know what I mean, Math 101, and you have to prove through all these nuts and bolts that you're allowed to ask these questions, by that time they kind of shut down.
Well, you know, there's such a homogenous, you know, different studies that people have when they first go into college.
Yeah.
And I know we were talking before about, you know, looking in terms of, say, the schools that are like the dormitories of. Now, can you expound a little bit more on that part when we're talking about?
Yeah, well, number one, a college education is in no way, shape, or form a uniform playing field. The Ivy League colleges are completely their own culture, which is different than what you say is second tier, if you could call second tier U of M or Berkeley, right? And then you get into what you call third or fourth tier, and then you get these pipeline schools that Trump helped. And the truth is, the first and the second tier schools are where the leaders are made. And the third and fourth and fifth tier schools are just ways of getting FAFSA people to pay into loans to get really more vocational training, even though they're being told that they're getting college training. And again, they're not allowed to ask those larger questions. I think a lot of minorities are encouraged into STEM because we're encouraged to just come up with bigger guns and bigger technologies that will destroy one another with more efficiency. We're not asked about being more a part of public policy. And if you look at presidents, whether it's Modi or Angela Merkel or Trump, right, Modi meaning the Prime Minister of India, these are now transnational presidents. The way they're elected and the way they keep their power has nothing to do with citizenship, just like the way the mayor's office is as much 248 money as 313.
Okay. So now, if a person, let's say, goes into your field of study, what type of occupations could they get into once they complete, let's say, your course of study?
Well, here is some of the real facts about anthropology. Number one, it's still a really elite field of study. A lot of people don't get into it because it doesn't make money. And in that sense, the people who have taken over anthropology and the politics of representation have really taken over a lot of voices and even been able to romanticize poverty or perhaps maybe build our own careers based on suffering that isn't ours. Anthropology needs to be reclaimed. I think the process started in the 60s and 70s, but then as you see in the 80s and 90s with all these student loans and all these other things, it's making it harder for people of color to access college, and when they do access college, it's harder for them to access history. Across the nation, history departments are closing, but I think Yale hired like 23 more historians. So history itself is becoming a treasure, and a treasure for the select few. And the history that the rest of us are being fed, whether it's from the doubters of the Confederacy or whatnot, is literally driving people to psychological crisis.
So now, what then would you say to the population that may be interested in going into anthropology to kind of romance them a little bit into coming and being more cognizant of the field of anthropology and to delve a little bit more deeper into the history of a people or peoples?
You see, anthropology is a social science, and in that way, it's a little bit different than history in the sense that we're looking at how people normalize the everyday feelings of inequality. For instance, for some reason I believe I'm a female. For some reason I believe I'm Indian. This has been inculcated in me my whole life. So I build choices like the earrings I'm wearing on my identity. Somebody told you your name was Mr. Darwin Griffin, and you went by that. 90% of our reality is built by how other people perceive us and how we think of that. So for instance, even in language, it's a supernatural acquisition of the you. Because when you look in the mirror, you don't say, I love me, right? Me being the object, you say, I love you, perhaps, right? If you've been taught, you know, about loving yourself. Or I hate you, even, which you shouldn't do, really. But when you're saying, I love you in the mirror, that's really a dialogic imagination in your mind. Because we talk to ourselves more than we talk to anybody else. But the voices that we play in our mind again and again are those top 5 personalities, right? Top 10 personalities again and again.
Well, you know, it's so interesting because I think we all do the negative or the positive self-talk. And it's almost making me think back to when you would see the cartoons and you see the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other shoulder. And you're always wondering in terms of, say, about which is going to go and dominate your whatever action that you're going to do. And, you know, it's almost that yin and yang, you know, where you're trying to think in terms, say, about, okay, well, it's like that dichotomy key. Okay, I can do this, but if I do that, then this could happen. So you're always thinking about choices.
It's trying to balance out your passion with your sense of compassion, right? Your passion being self-directed interest or desire, and compassion is your need to please other people and to make sure that they get what they're getting out of their relationship with you. Because without compassion, you can't build status, and without passion, you can't really build that personality that you think you have. But you're always balancing your need to be connected with your need to break free. But you see, that's a false dichotomy, and that's what we're taught. That's what we're taught about in terms of teenage years. That's what we're taught in terms of poverty. But that's a false dichotomy. I think Du Bois' dichotomy of the double consciousness rings more true than this idea of the good versus the bad in the person. Because in terms of yin yang, or even in terms of passion versus compassion, that's really about how you want to define yourself, right? It's not about committing a wrong act. For instance, you could do a lot of right acts, right? You could see like a kid drowning in a river and you're like, oh, I want to run for office, so I'll bring a camera crew out and I'll save this kid, right? That's a right act. But intentionally or karmically, did you go anywhere, or did you actually use that kid as a vehicle and therefore doubly use, once in his suffering and drowning, and second by you saving him even?
Well, and that's something, because I know I was talking to somebody, you know, earlier, and we were talking about, what do you see are the basic, because we've got only a couple of minutes left, but just what do you see are the basic differences between males and females?
Wow. I don't know, because across cultures there's such a diversity of relationships for males and females. I'll say what's going on in American culture is a breakdown of family. And with the breakdown of families, a breakdown of tolerance, is a breakdown of faith communities, because it's really through interfaith communities and intergenerational discussions that a lot of differences are bridged, and that's shutting down. We could talk about in terms of economics and all these other things, but it's a really attack on the middle class, working class, poor family that most people are suffering from. And from that sense of dislocation, you see all these other kind of insecurities abound.
Yeah, because it seems like there's a lot more that we are going through right now, and especially with society going on today, that we need to do one thing and one thing only. We need to go and get back to the basics and love one another.
The black male is still an endangered species. Shit hasn't changed, sorry.
Yeah, and that's the part that we need to talk more about.
Yeah.
But that's another show.
Yeah,
that's a
indeed.
totally another show right
Indeed.
there.
Biology is politics.
Oh, no question. Well, again, I do want to thank you for coming on the show. I've definitely got to invite you to come back again.
Thank you. It's been a blessing to know you.
And it's been a blessing to know you as well. But I really would love to have you come back again and we can kind of dialogue a little bit more, especially about the black male and
Oh, yes.
their role in society, because that's really important right there. But I do want to thank you again. I hope that you'll come back. You've been watching Expose Under the Sun, sponsored by the Detroit Native Sun newspaper. If you'd like to get a copy of the Detroit Native Sun newspaper, you can contact Ms. Valerie Lockhart at area code 313-457-5944, and you can pick up a copy of the Detroit Native Sun newspaper at your local Kroger supermarkets. Again, I do want to express my sympathies and condolences to the family of Suzanne Stewart, and I want to tell everybody this holiday season, be safe, be merry, but be at peace with each other. And I leave that word with you today. Peace.